No, there we go. So, welcome to the fifth and final webinar of our Placemakers series. This one is entitled Audience Development. My name is Dr. Michael Pierre Johnson, and I'm a creative economy researcher at the Innovation School at the Glasgow School of Art. So I'm currently delivering an Arts and Humanities Research Council funded fellowship titled The Value of Creative Growth, and it's developing design-based approaches to support and evaluate the creative and cultural sector, particularly at the sole trader and micro-enterprise level. Charts is collaborating with my research, supported by Creative Scotland's Create Networks Fund, to explore with its members what they and local places need to survive and thrive. So Placemakers has been a series of engagement activities through social media, webinars such as this one, and creative online workshops, and has been running from late September, and this is the final week until early September, sharing stories, expertise, and ideas under 5 themes. These have been digital stories, which was very much positioned as a response to the COVID crisis and the upskilling in digital sort of skills and platforms a lot of people have needed to go through. Slow growth, recognizing that in creative work and development, it's very much about relationship building, establishing yourself in context and what that looks and feels like at that sole trader and network level. Creative production that looked at the coordination of professional work as cultural engagement with the role of creative producers and how they can bring different disciplines in relation to audiences and how that can play a very vital role in placemaking. And 2 weeks ago was Island Life, which very much looked at the stories of creative practitioners and network sort of based work like festivals on the islands and how they differ and how they're kind of similar to the wider stories across Argyll and Bute. And then tonight, audience development or developing audiences. All of these were aiming to promote creative placemaking collaborations across Argyll and Bute. This activity also aims to support or stimulate interest in proposals to our Placemakers Microcluster Networks Fund, which is offering £5,500 and some extra expert support to 3 local creative and cultural collaborations who will be delivering projects for places and communities in the region. The deadline for that is only 1 week away, 1 week today. So if there are any people who are just learning of this now, then do get in touch. There's a page on the opportunities page that has a long list of question and answers from sessions we've run previously. So if there's any sort of gaps or uncertainties, that should give you a good head start on what information you need to know for any submissions. But as I said today, our theme is audience development. And this aims to recognize the shared challenges and opportunities for reaching and sustaining customers, attendees, participants, and investment in creative work and cultural events in Argyll and Bute. The format we've prepared for this webinar is for our 4 panelists to provide 10-minute presentations and sharing their experiences or insights on reaching audiences. This will then be followed by a panel discussion with everyone from the panel who's presented on key challenges and opportunities for Argyll and Bute, particularly focusing on the role of digital in these times in audience development and the role of evaluation. So the speakers will introduce themselves in more detail at the beginning of their presentations, but we're very, very excited to have Jen Skinner from Screen Argyll, who's based on Tiree, to talk to us about reaching younger audiences. We have Anne Campbell from the Dunoon Area Alliance, facilitator for SURF, who is Scotland's Regeneration Forum. We have Jenny Hunter, who's Creative Arts and Education Manager at Dunoon Borough Hall. And finally, Sarah Boyling, who is a London-based consultant for the arts and heritage organisations in the cultural sector. Now, if during the webinar, attendees have any questions they would like to pose, we recommend that they can submit them through the chat function, which you'll find on the icons at the bottom of your screen when you move your cursor particularly, and we'll aim to address them either between presentations or at the end final discussion as well. So I'll stop sharing there. And firstly, if I could hand over to Jen Skinner, who'll be sharing screen for our first panelist presentation, please.
Cool. Okay, so thanks very much, Michael. So I'm going to talk about young audiences. So my name's Jen, and I've worked in film exhibition for the last 20 years, and a part of that time was spent coordinating the film education programme at the National Media Museum, and I also worked for nearly 10 years as a creative practitioner at the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester. So this talk's a kind of whistle-stop tour on how to reach young audiences and some ideas of what you can do with them. And it's got a wee bit of kind of film focus. So bringing young people to your venue can start a vital relationship with them. It's a chance to promote your programme, an opportunity to build the audience for the future. It's an important part of the community, giving schools and young people the chance to watch films or take part in exhibitions or showcase their own, can build loyalty and develop a passion for the arts and break down barriers from an early age. Just going to start my stopwatch. I forgot to do that, so I keep to time. So why do it? Okay, to increase profit, to increase the audience numbers, maximise potential audience for screenings, fulfil this charitable remit, to fulfil funding requirement, to create young ambassadors, bring a new voice to your venue, and to do your part in building the audience of the future. It's really key to make sure that everybody in your building or organisation are on board with the aims of why you're doing this, because sometimes you may get more revenue in some ways, but it can also take a lot of time to bring young people into your building and a commitment. So you need to make sure that you've kind of agreed your aims and that everybody is behind you on it. So who are young audiences? Well, they can be anywhere from the ages 3 to 30. The BFI now so before it used to go up to 25, it's gone up to 30 now in its definition of young audiences. So they will all have different requirements. The key to attracting an audience from formal education is an enthusiastic teacher or head teacher. And I love this quote from Mark Reed at the BFI. So he's the head of education, and he says, schools give the broadest access to the widest range of young people, which is so great. It's so true, because it means you're not relying on a parent who might have already have a relationship with the building. If you invite a whole class, you're getting everybody from that class to come to your organisation, or if you go into school. All schools will generally work at least a term ahead, so when planning their trips, linking to the curriculum will enable teachers to justify a reason for their outing. To working within education, so just going to break down what each needs. So primary schools generally find it easier to get out, so they're much easier, or for you to go into school normally if we're not in COVID. And they have more flexibility, but they'll also require extra staffing and facilities. Secondary schools, these sessions will need to be subject-based, and unless they're offers that sit outside the school day, like student nights. And then there's home educators. So there's a website there where you can share details of venues and find out about any groups in your area. So they'll and also if you can invite them to an event that's for a school's event and invite the home educators too, but make sure they feel included and that you don't just talk about the curriculum and school, because it can make them feel isolated and not included. So research and plan when in the school term the dates are for their holidays, or what they're doing for exam time, what times of the year they're busy, how much notice they need. So make sure that you've done all that planning. And I've just got a wee case study here. So primary schools will find it easier to get out on school trips or for you to go in. So this is lovely Jim Parkin, who's just become a director of Screen Argyle. So we're very excited about that. And he's a senior model maker for Aardman. So he came up to Tyree, he made a morph with every single child in primary. He introduced a film, The Curse of the Were Rabbit, that he'd worked on. So he introduced that to the local community. He did a morph making workshop for adults, and then he did a careers talk for the secondary school. So it was kind of, we had one person, and he was great because he was a named person. We could show some films that he had made, but also we just got our money's worth from him totally. He made about 80 more while we were here. We totally maximized his schedule and made sure his reach just went across the whole of the community. So this is some of the kids making their morphs. That's a morph on Tyree. Secondary. So sessions for these groups will need to be subject-based unless they're offers that sit outside the school day. So CPD sessions and teacher previews, or use talents and facilities that you've got at hand. You can make notes or intros or discussions. So you could even like, and when we were at the museum, we used to get our marketing manager to do a talk to people on a marketing course for students. So it might not just be to do with the content that you've got within an exhibition or on your screen. It might be to do with some of the people that work in your venue and find out some of the practicalities. There's something that you could, like for a school, that's a really great resource for young people to learn more about how things work. So working with teachers, so it kind of gives you some of the ideas of the different areas of the curriculum that you can work across. And if you're working explicitly with cinema and film, there's media studies, film studies. What's so fantastic in Scotland as well is that film can be studied as a text. So that's really great in terms of screening films and working with that across subjects with young people. CPD and teacher previews. So as we said, that engaging a teacher is a really key element of developing your program. So you could organise some continued professional development sessions in your venue, and this also will give you the chance to run past ideas and find out what teachers would like and what they need from you, and build relationships with them. You could also offer your venue to like a lot of the teachers will have like subject meetings, and so you could offer your space to be a space that they could come and do their meetings in, and it just gets them used to being in their meeting. And while they're in there, you just give them, you could either give them some literature about what you're planning, or and give them some cake and wine as well. That's another key element to building that relationship with teachers. I think that works a treat. Yeah. So you can find teachers in Scotland on, there's the schools website, will give you a list of all the schools to connect with. And then another key area, so we've talked about formal education. I'm going to look a bit now about families. So here are some ideas of things that we've done. Actually, I'll just go back before we go to that scary picture. So family, so engage families with added activities. Make sure the family program has a regular slot so that the audience know when to expect it. When programming for under fives, think about the length of the film or the height of the exhibition and all the other facilities that you'll need to accommodate that age group. So I'm going to look at a couple of case studies now and give you some ideas. So this was from Bradford Animation Festival, and it was one of the hardest screenings I ever worked on. And we were talking about what to do for the Animation Festival, and we were doing a whole thing about Lottie Reiniger and Prince Ahmed and Beautiful Shadow Puppets, which you've got some resource sheets on next. But we did sing along Frozen, and we sold out. It's the first thing that sold out. It ended up getting put on 3 times, and it was just rammed with all these girls all climbing up on the stage, trying to touch the screen, sitting in the aisles, but they had an amazing time. And a lot of them were young people, so it was in Bradford, who wouldn't necessarily have come into the museum. So it was great. It was a real success, and it was the best attended event of the festival. Here are some of the resource sheets that we've done for a tour of Prince Ahmed. So these are things that you could just either create or find something online that links to your screening or event, and then you can have these in the cafe, and then they're promoting your event and kind of signposting it to families, whilst also giving families something to do or do them before or after the film. It's really nice doing activities, I think, especially after the film, because it kind of, if you're doing a drawing activity or making activity and you're all gathered around, gives everybody an informal chance to discuss the film or discuss the event and kind of find out a bit more what they thought and process it in an informal way. So this was, you had to draw a strange creature. And these are some things that we did for the ICO tour of the Big Nights. And I'm a massive fan of hats and masks and dressing up for screenings in particular. So this idea is that you could make all these masks and wear them during the screening. And then this was a so we made a story dice, and then you looked at the 3-act structure, so it's for older kids to kind of break down how the story would be made and make up their own after the screening. But then again, they could also be in the cafe, so lots of venues use them to promote the screening of the Big Nights. And this one was you could make some clothes for them, so that was quite fun. I'm going to look at a few things that we did at the Whitworth now. So 3 of the sessions that I worked on regularly there One was called Arty Picnics, which was for like under fives, and we had a massive, beautiful gallery space, and the Whitworth Art Gallery is also next to Moss Side. So, but it was so fantastic at engaging in that local audience. So we'd work in the local school, or we had just, I mean, it was luckily it had a decent amount of funding that was able to provide a lot of these events for free. And so a lot of the sessions were drop in. The picnic one was for under fives. There'd be a picnic blanket. Everybody'd always have like a parent or a guardian with them, and then be an activity laid out, and so it would have to be appropriate for that age group, so they wouldn't have done this tiger visor one. And then they'd have their lunch and just sort of, I mean, a lot of them would be crawling around the gallery floor and things like that, but it was just great to see them use it. And this one is another example of me loving a hat. So we made tiger visors, and it was to do with one of the exhibitions, so we could all wear there and then roar like a tiger. We did this one was going around looking at different bits of the artwork and then kind of having a game of consequences as part of it. This was something that we left out in the summer holidays so that you could make your own pocket gallery, go around the exhibition. And what I loved about working at the Whitworth was because it was an art gallery of loads of amazing textile stuff, you couldn't use any wet materials. So I became a master at cutting out paper and double-sided sticky tape, but it's so much easier to tidy up. So that's something to consider when you're doing workshops, is like the setup and what can go wrong when you're kind of working out what you want to use. So this one was just using, because it's such an amazing big gallery space, there was an exhibition that had textiles to do with crows, so we made these balloon crows that you just ran up and down the gallery with, and it was, and so this was for a Colourful Sunday session. So the Colourful Sunday would be for an older child, and all of them should be kind of monitored by a parent or guardian, but sometimes one parent might stay with a few, and then they'd go off and see the exhibition, and it'd be open for an hour and a half, and they just drop in. And it was great to have instruction sheets, because it would be one person and it could be 60 people there sometimes, so it meant you'd have a trolley with everything laid out. They'd go and help themselves, and you could just wander around and check that everybody was okay. So how to engage teenagers. I think one of the key things with engaging teenagers is making them feel ownership of the space. So making sure that they feel that they belong there. You don't want to kind of manage to get them into your building and then to be made to feel unwelcome or that they don't belong. I think it's especially something that art house cinemas can struggle with, because it can be a bit of not necessarily a welcoming place sometimes. So here's a couple of examples. I mean, this wasn't really like art house. It was the first, this is 15 years ago, maybe like 17 years ago, the first Pirates of the Caribbean. And I was managing a cinema in Hebden Bridge. And so we got A-level students to decorate all the foyer. They brought their friends. We had worked with a nightclub, like but it wasn't a music night, to have a big after party with pirate music and rum, and and everybody dressed up. So it's kind of a way of engaging. But by getting the young people to decorate the foyer and make posters for the event, it brought them more young people to the event. And this was very similar. So this was to do with the opening of a film for the Corner House at the time, Spanish Film Festival. So it was a very niche. I mean, it was a brilliant film, but it was Torremolinos 73 wasn't a film that anybody would have got a big audience, but we sold out with a younger audience by having everyone dressed up as 70s characters. We had tapas, we had some cheesy Spanish 70s music playing in the foyer, and then there was like an after party following the screening. So young film programmers, so partnerships are key, whether you're working with local organisations or youth-centred ones like Beavers, or working in partnership can help you reach a larger group of young people. Our partnerships would be with other partnerships can be with national organisations or events like the Big Draw. Working with these will increase your profile and potentially support you with resources or ideas. Working in partnership like this can be great, in particular for Argyll, as it helps our young people to be part of a wider conversation and connects them with other organisations and young people. And then other sort of programs that you can link up with is things like the Arts Award, which I know we've done work with Dunoon before to help deliver. There's a few people that deliver that. So then again, that's them get a certificate through taking part that they can use towards their university points. And it's so it kind of gives them another element to taking part in your program. These are some of our young film programmers. So we were nominated Film Club of the Year a few years ago, and they got to go down to London to the Interfilm Awards. So this is to sort of showing you a bit how nice young people at their award ceremony. So youth advisors. Youth advisors are another great way of connecting with young people, because you can run ideas past them. They'll be a sounding board for you. They can help devise the posters, and they can give their voice to your projects. So yeah, they're really worth looking into if you're serious about developing young audiences and you've got an idea of the age range in mind, and then you recruit that group that connects with the audience you're wanting to reach. And so partnership, so this was with the screening with the Beavers, and then also it's not just so we work with Beavers, that brought the whole of Beavers to a screening, but then we also worked with a commercial partner in terms of Tyree Chocolates. So when we did Willy Wonka, they did a chocolate treasure hunt, they brought the chocolate, so it's kind of working like that to enhance the screening and make it more attractive, which I think chocolate does. So that's good. Membership schemes, so value for money is important for young people, especially with cinemas. So thinking about help them take a risk with their choices. As a venue, can organise a membership scheme for 16 to 30s, and that will help promote loyalty with your venue, potentially increase attendance, increase the frequency of attendance, give you access to more information about the young people who are coming and their viewing habits, and hopefully encourage them to access a wider range of activities. Right, so your venue and staff. This is really key, and we've touched on it before. So it's just making sure that everybody in your venue is signed up to this, is that you want to do this. Like, are they ready for young people, especially if you're looking at getting a whole primary school to come to a screening or to come and do a workshop, or even 30 kids. That's a lot of kids to manage in a small gallery space. So you need to make them feel welcome, and you want them to return. And ensure the events aimed at the young people are clearly signposted so that everybody knows what to expect, including your regular audience. And as I mentioned, it's that kind of, for an art house cinema, if we get a young audience in and they're all eating popcorn and then they get hushed and told off, and that'll make them feel like they never want to come back. You want them to feel they own that space. So you need to think about what have you got, like, can you manage 150 children, say, if you were having a whole primary in, plus teachers arriving at the same time? What will you need in terms of staffing? How will you steer large groups through the foyer into the auditorium, queuing for toilets? Do you have anywhere they can eat their packed lunches? That's like you know that, and make sure the cafe, if they're going to be them in there, they know about it. Do you have a workshop or breakout space? Parking for coaches? Is it a shared building? Does everybody know? Does the cleaner know it's going to happen? Does the receptionist know it's going to happen? Have you got nappy changing facilities? So thinking about the requirements to do with the age that you're working in. We just touched on safeguarding, but basically you'll need to make sure you have appropriate PVGs, child protection safeguarding, and have done risk assessments. And the NSPCC website is a really fantastic resource, and it's got online training on there. Programming, so kind of thinking about who you're programming for, what age group is it appropriate, and how will you engage them with the additional activities. And so this was something we did for attracting young people for WesFest. So we picked Wes Anderson as part of a BFI tour, and we worked with lots of venues, but in particular the Tower in Helensburgh. And so we worked with an illustrator from Glasgow School of Art, and we did risograph posters, and then the Tower in Helensburgh worked with a group of students to help promote their screening, and they did a weekend of screenings with silent disco after the film, and it was in where their submarine was. So each the 2 nights they finished with a life aquatic and encouraged people to wear red hats, and then they could take part in the disco afterwards. Show their work. So schools, colleges and universities often produce work within their coursework, as do youth groups and initiatives aimed at young people. Show them at your venue, either as part of a public programme or a special event. Encourage the maker or the class to bring all their friends or family, and then you've got an audience. That's the Golden Owl Awards in Leeds, which is quite an event. Communication. use young people to communicate with each other. So that's where your ambassadors or advisors come in. Don't try and use youth speak yourself, and GIFs are a very handy resource. They always go down well. Know your audience, grow your audience is a picture that Tyneside did from 8 years ago, but I really love this image of that kind of, that's why, you know, that's a lot, especially with cinema, why we do it, is because we're trying to build that audience for the future. So how do you communicate them? Make sure you find out what you can, like what was the last film they watched at the cinema, how did they hear about it? You can find out these things through social media. Communicate, talk to your audiences, and when they're in your venue, make sure you talk to them. And I always feel like, well, if you can get them back 3 times, they kind of started a pattern with them. So yeah, I think it's just kind of keeping that dialogue open. And Jenny's going to talk more about this, but just evaluation, do it and use it. It's much better to use what a young person has said about you to attract young people than trying to say it in your own words. So yeah, so that was I talked very fast because I had a lot to get through, but hopefully that I can answer some questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Jen. It's over in a little bit of time, but I was very happy to let you carry on because there was so much valuable content in there. So brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. So if there are any questions, please submit them in the chat, and Jen may be able to respond in the chat, or we'll come to them at the final discussion at the end. However, we'll move on straight to our next speaker, which is Anne Campbell. So if she's ready, sharing screen. Oh, and unmute as well. Sorry, Anne. It's like the
yeah, that does tend to help, doesn't it? Sorry, I have a light here on my paper, so I'll be lovely underlit screen.
Dramatic.
I'll just share my screen for the moment. So, and while I'm doing that, I'll say I do work for Surf Scotland's Regeneration Forum, but I'm here tonight in my capacity as a freelance practitioner for Dunoon Film Festival, which I've been doing for the last 7 years. So although I'm sure Surf won't mind me crediting them tonight in some way as well. So as I said, we've all been asked to talk a little bit about audience development. So to give you a little bit of background, first of all, Dunoon Film Festival is run by Dunoon Borough Hall Trust. It was established in 2013, and there have been 7 annual festivals in total so far, 2020 being the first one that hasn't happened yet. It currently runs in November of each year, and there's a full weekend of programming across 3 different venues in the town centre, and that's complemented by outreach activities that happen in the run-up to the programme and afterwards as well. It's been supported over the years by a variety of year-to-year funding from Regional Screen Scotland and from Creative Scotland, and it benefits enormously from the input of freelance film professionals like Jen and others, and film festival networks across Scotland. Local business sponsorship is also crucial to the festival in that it provides match funding, but it also provides extra promotion locally through those businesses. We provide them with free tickets to events, which they then can either use themselves or use in a promotion on their own social media. So we get an extra benefit there. And throughout the 7 years, Western Ferries has been the main sponsor locally. All right, try and remember to move my presentation along. I've just put some photos on these slides and I'll just talk over them. It's really just to give you a flavour of what the festival has been up to. It developed out of feasibility studies into how to rescue what Dunoon Borough Hall could be used for. It was being rescued by the community from potential demolition, and the ambition was to turn it into a cultural venue for the town. And the question was, would a film festival draw regional audiences to the town itself? So there was specific audience research done at that very early stage, and that informed the programme of the first festival. And then from there on in, the programme has constantly evolved as a result of each year's evaluation, data gathering, and just audience interaction and community engagement. We've settled on a nice pattern of programming, actually, which offers something, we hope, offers something for all ages and for all interests. Quite a broad ambition, but it's worked so far, we find. So it includes Scottish films or films with a specific local interest, so filmed in the area or filmed nearby, independent and world cinema, documentaries, popular classics, family events and event cinema where there's an extra element, whether it's scratch and sniff screenings or sing along or something with drink and food and dancing, always goes down well. And alongside these film screenings, there's also a programme of participatory workshops and discussion sessions. We aim to deliver an inclusive festival, and this involves both signed and subtitled screenings, the use of a variety of accessible venues, dementia-friendly events, free activities over the course of the whole period for different interest groups and different ages. And we've recently been piloting some outreach events in rural venues in partnership with other organisations, including Joni's organisation, Joni, who's here tonight. And that's been an interesting development. Sorry, just change my screen. From the first festival, we've always included a healthy budget for design and marketing and promotion. That was seen as a priority. So this has covered printed brochures that are distributed locally across Dunoon and Cowal, but also out into Inverclyde and Glasgow and across to cinemas in Edinburgh as well. We also heavily invested in on-street promotion. We tried to do that in as environmentally friendly a way as possible and reuse things. But we tried to reach across the town and into the residential areas. We're heavily supported by our local newspaper, which features the festival regularly. Try to get into national press, and we have quite a strong social media and website presence. We've found that having an instantly recognisable design style has been really, really valuable. You can see that, you know, it echoes across the years. And so people catch sight of a brochure or they catch sight of a poster and they know that the film festival is on the horizon. So that has been a really good investment. And looking to build our audiences and reach further into our community, we've worked over the last couple of years with Tacit, which is a local design agency with community engagement expertise, and we've been testing and developing a variety of different approaches. So you see there the giant Calamity Jane, who was present on the street for quite a few days to draw some attention. We've promoted, taken specific themes out of the programme and promoted them specifically, so targeting family events and getting that information into nurseries and into primary schools has been really important. We've been looking at getting information into specific social housing neighbourhoods to encourage people to consider what they might want to come and see. And we've also tried recruiting citizen journalists who were asked to attend a variety of events and then give us their honest feedback on their experience of the festival. Try and move that along, thank you. From the outset, the aim was to build a welcoming and friendly festival that would have something for everyone, hopefully, and was both affordable and accessible, as I said earlier. So we want to create an atmosphere there where the community are enjoying you know, a weekend of fun and stimulation, but also where visitors then feel that they've joined our community for the period that they've been here, and see a community you know, at its best. So the programme includes free workshops, as I said, for all ages, some of them featured here. So we've had animation things, we've had parkour stunt sessions, horror makeup sessions, and filmmaking. And the filmmaking tends to draw all ages as well, which is really interesting. That's turned out to be a sort of intergenerational workshop across the years. We regularly include free screenings of heritage films, and particularly like to use the Dunoon Pier as a setting for that. It's very apt given its A-listed status. It's also underutilised, and people really appreciate the chance to get in there for a nosy. We've also done a variety of outdoor activities around the town, from making plasticine monsters in line with the Ray Harryhausen screening, to A Wall is a Screen, which actually took a tour around the town and projected films onto different buildings with an audience of 100, which was a great surprise. I had put bets on us getting fewer than 20, but I was pleasantly beaten on that bet. But those outdoor events are free, and they draw a crowd, or they draw attention. They get people talking, and then talking about something new happening in the town. We also like to include fun event cinemas, events like I mentioned earlier, so that sing-along thing, and anything that gets people up dancing. A lot of we tap into things that are available from other festivals, like live score events, and they can also get folk on their feet. But using the variety of venues, it allows us different approaches. Like Jen was saying, you know, sometimes it's you want 150 children sitting on the floor watching something, or you want, on the other end of it, you want an immersive cinema experience. So we utilise the local cinema for that, but we'll use the Borough Hall for the, you know, hundreds of people all ramming in together, or like you can see there on the screen, the dog-friendly screening that we had a couple of years ago. Anything that will get a different audience to try something new, to come along and give the film festival a bit of a shot, and hopefully we'll be able to get them to come back. One of the key things though is that at every event and activity we have a Dunoon Film Festival ambassador there, a volunteer, usually from Cowell Cinema Club or from one of our one of the Borough Halls groups. And their task is to meet and greet the visitors and the audience as they arrive, to make sure that people feel welcomed, that they know where they're going, to introduce people to each other, to welcome any guests, to hand out audience voting cards. We run a audience favourite vote. So at the end of the festival, there's a winning screening that's the most popular. And that gives us an opportunity for the volunteers to actually engage with the audience, have a chat and get their feedback, and make sure that we're picking up on any issues or any opinions that are being expressed. And so in terms of building connections, growing an inclusive and engaging festival for our community, it means connecting with as many partners as possible. And first and foremost of these, as I said earlier, is Cowell Cinema Club. The Cinema Club was established out of the first film festival here, and they are centrally involved in advising on programming and in providing the volunteers. But we also work really closely with Dunoon Grammar School, and like Jen said, you know, it's specifically subject-based, so we work with the admin and IT department, and pupils over 2 different year groups organise their own screenings for primary schools and nurseries and incorporate some creative activities within that. We also link with Cowell Elderly Befrienders, and local care homes for dementia-friendly screenings. And we have organised exclusive screenings for the local young carers group and for our youth theatre group. And like I said earlier, over the last 2 years, we've been piloting the rural outreach, both in some village hall locations and in local rural primary schools. And we also have contributed to the transport costs for some rural primary schools to come to events in Dunoon to make sure that they're able to attend. So just to conclude, audience development is a never-ending process. No matter how successful our event was last year, there's absolutely no guarantee that people will come until they're here and in their seats. And we just need to keep working at audience development and audience engagement and keeping people with us. But when it works, it's fantastic. And central to that is making sure that our events are all welcoming and helpful and relaxed, and support people to make the most of them. So I'm happy to take any questions in the chat as we go. Sorry, again, that was another whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it was of interest.
I don't give you much time, do I?
Did I run out of time? Oh, sorry. And
there's so much rich material to share, but that was great.
Yes.
Sorry.
And I forgot, we've also got a very short film, but we could maybe wait and show that another time.
Yeah, just to mention to everyone that there's a link on the chat right at the beginning of it that Anne shared that links to a sort of promotion video about Dunoon Film Festival. So afterwards, you can follow that up.
Yeah, and it was another tool in the audience development toolkit. We get something like that done that's a very short, just summary of people being enthusiastic about the festival, and we can use that throughout the year and throughout the years to try and engage with new people.
Yeah.
So I will now mute.
Thank you terrifically, Anne. Great stuff. And next, we're going to move straight on to Jenny Hunter, connected to the same context, being one of the managers at Dunoon Borough Hall. So why don't you share screen, Jenny, and we'll look forward to hearing your experiences.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. So I'm Jenny Hunter. I manage the Creative Arts Programme at Dunoon Borough Hall. So that's a gallery, our year-round exhibition programme, and theatre. I also do, I'm actually particularly passionate about community engagement and working with children and young people, and I think that's where my heart really lies. But also what I have to do is find the funding to deliver projects as well. So I'm probably the person most in our organisation at the moment that really understands the value of evaluation and report, because I have to write all the reports and write all the funding applications. So first I wanted to say that I'm absolutely no expert. I am trying to wean myself off end of project evaluation forms, which are these dreaded things that you get handed out that you have to make everyone sit down and answer 5 questions. And I really want to find informal ways to evaluate projects, because I know what the arts do is so important and so life-changing that we've got to do it better than just, or we've also got to it's really important that we capture it, because although as creatives, we all know the benefits that this makes, funders don't, the arts are really a minority in terms of the whole scope of funding that's out there. So I would just want to encourage myself and you guys to be creative in how you do it, use the tools that you've got, and just try out new ideas. And I think I went on a training course over the summer during lockdown, and I think that's what I learned, that you don't have to do it the same way as everyone else. So why do we do it? I think we do it to demonstrate the difference that we make, to demonstrate that there's a need for what we do in the community, to gather evidence, to share that with our partners and stakeholders, for reports for funders, very, very important, and also informs our next funding application. And it also, as an organisation, should feed back into our organisation and allow us to kind of reflect and adapt for future projects. Who do we do it for? We do it for funders, of course, that's sort of number one, but we also do it for stakeholders within a project, but also really and crucially for internally for our own organisation. It can often be the board directors or other members of staff or volunteers aren't quite aware of what's happening and how this is really building into the whole organisation. And I'm certainly not got it sussed, but I'm really determined to try and ensure that the good work is evaluated properly and then shared in a way that kind of makes sense, you know. So how best to capture it? Obviously, we're all creatives. Just find the way that you work, whether it's film or photography, whether it's written word or sound. And then also what's really important is how to present it. So you don't have to wait until a project's completed and write it in a report and then stick it in a file in your system and send it off to one funder and that's it. But perhaps we can think of different ways to sharing it. Okay. Oh, sorry. Go back a bit. Okay, so I've just got a couple of really, really simple things that have impressed me over the years. A couple of years ago, we brought a contemporary dance piece to the Borough Hall. It was really difficult to market it because it was a completely new piece. We didn't know who really it was aimed for. The marketing information from the company was quite sparse, but it looked interesting and we knew it was kind of going to be really professional. But what I was so impressed was that the immediacy of the feedback that company Cordelia got back. So they asked, because it was a tour, immediately after the performance, they invited the audience to just write down their thoughts on a piece of paper. And because the performance was so powerful, you know, people were eager. They were actually, couldn't get them away from the tables and the pens. They wanted to put that down. And then the next day, the feedback was on social media, you know, which then, you know, it was simple. It didn't take an awful lot of effort, but it was just really well thought through. And for me, I think the feedback's so much more powerful when it's done, when the timing of it, you know, if you wait 4 months till after a project's finished and then you go back to a parent and go, how did they enjoy it? It's just not the same, you know. So that really impressed me, that you can look at different ways to do this and it doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so Evaluation Support Scotland are a really great resource for evaluation materials. I went on a 6-day training course over the summer, and you know, some of it's quite dry, I have to be honest, but there's lots and lots of resources, and I think as creatives, we have to find our own way. We don't have to do it all, we absolutely don't, but we just have to find something that feels comfortable for us. And one of the interesting things, you know, why do we evaluate? Just a couple of the post-its on this slide says connecting staff to the bigger picture of the difference our organisation is making. Because I think it can be really easy to forget that when everyone's working so hard to keep going, to bring in the money, to do your job, you actually can forget the purpose of why you're here as an organisation. And that is why funders want to, that's why you're there, you know. I think also another main thing is it helps us to adapt our services. So, you know, to try out new things, and we don't know, we can't anticipate what will work or won't, but if we just give projects a time to evaluate, then, you know, we can learn from that. And I think finally helping us to think outside the box using really informal methods is really crucial. And one of the things that lately I've been really interested in is creating case studies. So that's from a specific project. There might be one young person that you focus on, because the story around that one young person will tell a bigger picture. And we'll actually, obviously I keep talking about funders because that's just so important that they understand who we are, and how they can help. And I think that we have to present our case in a way that's immediate, that's that people listen to, that they want to read about. And I think case studies are such a good way of doing that. So, you know what, informal, off-the-cuff remarks is so important. One of my key things is how do I get my artists who are running projects to gather information for me, because they're the ones that are working directly with young people. And I know that their head is full of amazing, interesting thoughts after every session, but I need to find a way that they want to engage with evaluation, because it just sounds like kind of such a dry way of doing it. And you know what, there's a really simple thing, and that's to pay artists. So, you know, we just don't build that into project planning, and to pay them 2 days at the end of a project to really write everything down is money really well spent. And, you know, otherwise, you know, artists are so head down, you know, artists put everything into a session. They don't want to stop at the end and then ask hard questions, you know. So it's just at the end of a project. That's a really, really good method. So over the summer, during lockdown, we got some funding to deliver wellbeing projects. And so that's what I did. I built in some funding for our artists. And obviously it was just such a difficult period for everyone, also for our artists who are facing new restrictions. We just don't know how to do this. We've never delivered projects online really before. So we worked with a group of young people who are at risk of homelessness, and it was so tough. You had to be so patient, and we were not looking for big, massive results and hundreds of people. This was 1 or 2 or 3 young people who if you persevered, you could see the benefits. Yeah, I think that was really, for the artists themselves, it was a really kind of humbling process, because they were understanding a bit more about their audience, their community, and what their own challenges were, and how to work around that. So firstly, of course, they asked them what they wanted to do, and then through working, so this is 16 to 25-year-olds. Through this, we discovered that a lot of them had their own children themselves. They had toddlers. Some of them were in a flat on their own with a 1 or 2-year-old. And remember, early down in lockdown, they couldn't get out. No one was allowed, or we were allowed out just to walk about. You weren't even allowed to sit down anywhere. So that was the challenges. One thing that was quite, we found out a really critical thing was that young people didn't even have a table to work on at home, and we just make so much assumptions about our community and our audiences and what their challenges are in engaging with us, and somehow trying to build empathy within projects. But that's a really important thing that we can then feed back to our partners, who can then work better to enable and facilitate help these young people. And then we've just got this really kind of lovely quote at the end that talks about what a difference this made to them during this really difficult period. And I think these 4 slides, you can easily write them down on paper, and you can create a case study from this that tells a really, really powerful story. And so that's something that I'm looking at more and more. So, and this is just a nice bit of feedback that I got today from my nieces who live in Norway, and I've not seen them all year, and I've sent them sparkly socks, and this was a photograph that I got. And isn't that what evaluation and feedback's about? Is just really getting across your message. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Jenny, for a passionate, honest, and really insightful sort of presentation. Really, really appreciated. Thank you. I've never felt more enthusiastic about evaluation, and I help run it. So you've done a great job there. So finally, among the panel, we have Sarah Boyling, and then we'll be having a last discussion amongst the panelists. So if Sarah can share screen, we'll get our last presentation.
Thanks, Michael. Can everyone see that okay? Because I've lost you all.
We're not seeing a shared screen yet.
You're not
Sarah.
seeing a shared screen. Okay, hold on. Let me just go back. Hold on. Here we go.
Yep, that's got it now.
That's better. Right, thank you. Wow, I'm really energized by all of what I've heard so far. So I'm going to do a very whistle-stop 5 steps to audience development in 10 minutes. And rather like all my colleagues that have spoken, you know, we could do a whole day on just this one topic. So it's very much kind of some top line principles really that I've gathered in my work as a freelance consultant over the last few years, working with independent cinemas, museums, galleries, community-based arts projects. So yeah. Step 1, have a plan. Doesn't need to be some massive 30-page tedious document, but just something. If you want to develop a particular audience, have something written down that just gives you a guide to what you're going to do. And like any plan, an audience development plan is really straightforward principles. The picture of where you are now, who are you engaging with, who's missing, a sense of where you want to get to. Do you need to earn more money, or do you need to reach out to a certain group that you're not engaging with? And then how are you going to get there? The kind of the practical nuts and bolts things you're going to put into place, what your program's going to be, what your different communication methods are going to be. And another really crucial element of a plan, how are you going to know it's been successful? That evaluation and monitoring part of it as well. And I really liked what Anne said, that audience development is a never-ending process. And for me, it's a big loop that you kind of go through this. You learn what worked, who you reached, what the feedback was, what went well, what didn't go so well. So then you build in that learning. Next time you do the festival again, or you do your next program, or you'll do your next project. In terms of a plan as well, for me, some key points are do it collectively. Involve as many people in your organization as you can. Don't sit in your little office or send your marketing people out to just write the plan. The more you can get colleagues buy-in, the better. Again, I was just reflecting on what Jen said in terms of the impacts of suddenly having 200 young people invade your venue. If you've all been part of that conversation from the start about why we're doing this, what the impacts are going to be, then everything's going to go much more smoothly. It doesn't have to be set in stone as well. Plans change, that's okay. But if you've got something written down, it really helps the direction of travel. And it also helps you just allocate your resources a bit more effectively. You know, nobody's got unlimited time or money or staff that they can draw on. So the more you can kind of plan and allocate those resources, the better. So my first principle is have a plan. My second principle is think holistically. So what I mean by this is audience development isn't just the publicity bit. It isn't just having fantastic branding and doing your Facebook ads and having a really amazing leaflet. it's kind of all the steps behind that, really. When audience development is effective, it kind of covers everything from what your actual program's going to be, what your events are, when are they going to be on, what's the timing, what's the location. And we heard loads, didn't we, earlier about putting things on in different, like, amazing places and different locations. So it's about thinking about the program. It's thinking about everything from the welcome, what the venue looks like, how you answer the phone, what the website looks like. Again, it's not just advertising and promotion, it's all of the things. If you think of like a customer's journey from when they hear about you to all the steps they need to go through to step through the door and to have that experience, that's what audience development's about. And so really, obviously, the smaller you are as an organization or a creative or a sole trader, the easier it is to have that conversation because you're in control of everything. So again, consulting with your colleagues is really key for step 2. Step 3, segment your audience or your market. So what all I mean by this is a sense that not everyone wants the same thing, behaves in the same way, or is looking for the same experience. So the more you can think about your audience as having like particular different groups of your audience will be looking for different things. So having a real sense of that can really then help you plan to meet those needs. You know, some people are looking for escapism. Some people might be looking for a really fun night out with their mates. Some people might be on a first date. Some people want to be kind of in a serious kind of learning environment where they're absorbing loads of new information. So the more you can know about the role that culture plays in people's lives and what they're looking for, the more you can then, again, target what you're doing to meet those needs. Step 4 is use evidence. My subtitle for this is Don't Assume. And Jenny just used those exact words when she was talking about that help program. And, you know, that was a very particular example of us assuming what resources different participants might be able to have at hand to take part in a creative program. But I think it's really easy when we're inside an organization or when we're the sort of experts to kind of think we know our audiences, particularly if you've been around the block for a while and you kind of jump to you lump everyone together, or you say, they'll never like that, or they'll never book in advance, or they'll never take a chance on that subtitled film. We kind of make assumptions about people. So for me, it's really, really important not to do that and to actually talk to them. And everyone who's spoken so far has talked about the value of just that informal conversation you can have with your audiences, whether it's kind of just hanging around in the foyer, looking at what people are saying about you on social media, inviting people in for a more kind of organized group discussion or a town hall meeting type thing. There is surveys as well, and surveys do have their place. But they're not the only way to get feedback and to understand what people want, what they're looking for. And you don't have to do it all yourself. There's loads of really useful research and evidence that other people have already done into particular audience groups. So if you know, for example, that you're really keen to develop a relationship with teenagers, yes, it will be fantastic to talk to teenagers in your own locality, but there's lots of research and case studies already out there that will already give you some top tips and tell you the things to do. And I think if it's an audience that you want to reach who you don't already have a relationship with, then it's even more important to talk to them and understand what's stopping them coming. What are they doing instead? What do they think of you? You know, what's their perception? You think you've got this amazing art centre with this fantastic something for everyone offer, but what do they think? Where are they going instead? You know, are they hanging out at going down to the shopping centre or whatever it is? What else are they doing with their time when they're not coming to you? So or every opportunity you've got to kind of talk to people is really helpful, whether it's the CPD sessions that Jen talked about with teachers to understand what they need. Anne talked about the ambassadors at the Dunoon Film Festival and all of their ongoing conversations. So building that in is really, really crucial. Step 5 is match your offer and your activities to the people you want to reach. And you'll have to excuse me with my clueless and my 1 or 2 film stills in here just to illustrate my points. I couldn't avoid using the lovely Cher and Dion from Clueless. So this is all, and again, we've heard all about this in action. This is about using what you know about those different audience segments you want to reach, what they're looking for, and then coming up with your program and your activities that match those needs. So this is about thinking programming wise, what kind of things do people want to see? Sing along Frozen's, for example, Wes Fest at the Tower Cinema and a trip into the submarine, events on the pier. You know, they're really lovely kind of entry point moments for people, as we've heard, to kind of become familiar and break down some of those initial barriers about what this film festival is all about, or what's this event. So your programming is at the heart of your audience development. Have I actually got the right program? That's what these people are looking for. Because creating all kinds of leaflets and doing all kinds of events and social media around it, if you haven't got the right offer, for me, it's not going to work, because that's really key. So that's one half of your matching. And then the other half of your matching is thinking about the ways to reach your different audiences. Are they big on social media? Is that their main source of information? Will they need to hear something from somebody else, like a mate who they really know and trust? Is there a partner you can partner with to reach a particular audience? If you haven't got a relationship with them, who else in the local town or in the county has got a relationship whose message you can piggyback to reach them? And the other part of this matching is thinking about kind of barriers and levers. And, you know, we know barriers are the things that are stopping people engaging. And these can be practical things like the cost, the transport, you know, I can't get a babysitter. I literally wouldn't be able to get up all of your stairs to get in the venue. There's lots of kind of practical barriers, but there's also a whole load of psychological barriers to think about. You know, is it for people like me? Is it going to be fun? Is it worth it? You know, why should I bother when it's much easier to just kind of sit and watch a Netflix? You know, all of those things we have to get over in our messaging about what the levers are that might encourage people to attend. So that's my whistle-stop tour through 5 steps to audience development. And I hope you'll agree that actually, in all the practical things that people have spoken about so far, you will have seen all of these steps in action, which is a real relief to me, because we didn't actually talk about our content together. And I just threw in a couple of quick bonus slides. So if the steps are the practical things to do, I just thought it was also worth bearing in mind, like the attitude and the ethics, maybe the philosophy of audience development. And again, I think we've seen this in the examples. You know, it's a way of thinking that values audiences and art as a kind of equal part of this offer that we're doing. It's about long-term relationships, not quickly get as much money in as we can. My third one is return on investment. Of course, you need to make sure that the resources you're putting into audience development, you're actually getting results that make it worthwhile, but they don't have to be financial results. They could well be about developing particular relationships, developing a particular community who you don't have, who isn't currently accessing something which is there in their community, and they have every right to be part of it as much as anyone else. I've got a point about being proactive. Quite a lot I hear, sometimes I'm working with our arts organisations or arts companies, and they say, oh, it's their fault, they just don't get us. Why don't audiences understand how brilliant we are? And it really annoys me, because I'm like, they don't understand because you're obviously not getting the message across in the right way. So I think we are the ones that need to adapt and change our process. If we're not reaching the people we want to reach, that's because something's going wrong our side of the equation. So being proactive is really crucial, not just sitting around and kind of complaining that, oh, why don't they come? It's on their doorstep. Don't they see? Don't they get it? And my other point is it's leadership led. I think the best audience development, again, you see it in the whole organization. It's not something that's just given to the education team or the marketing team or the outreach team. It's actually the whole organization working together, and that starts at the top. And here's a resource from Creative Scotland, which is for artists, which I think was produced to support some touring funding earlier this year. So if you want to delve into another lens through looking at audience engagement, this is quite a nice thing to look at, but some of you may well have seen it already. And that's it. Thank you.
Magical stuff. Thank you very much, Sarah. Some real knowledgeable insight there, and some really clear sort of principles to work along that I think everyone can relate to their own work. So I'm going to invite the panelists to all turn on their mics, because we will round off this webinar just with a panel discussion that reflects on some of the connections that Sarah was already very usefully sort of starting to make across the presentations there. But if I may, as a starter, because Sarah already mentioned so many important principles that run right across the presentations, but one I'd like to emphasize was the clear role of collaboration as part of audience development. Everyone was talking about processes and projects that involved other creatives, other members of their own team. And as you say, it cannot be a job you all do on your own, because you can't assume to know what a wide variety of people say. So it's really a role of listening and working together. And it was great to see so many examples that brought in practitioners at each of those different stages. So great to see, and each variable in that way as well. But to open up, I'm wondering if the panelists had questions of each other, first of all, if they had any points they kind of wanted to build on from what they've seen already. And of course, anyone viewing, if you've got questions to post on the chat, please do. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well and reflections.
Well, I just want to say it felt like a real tonic listening to you all your presentations, because that's the thing we mentioned. We were talking earlier about how we're really missing people, and that just remembering the audience and that energy and the shared experience, and it was just made me feel quite uplifted. And the idea that Jenny was talking about, how powerful the story is, and the idea in evaluation and the case studies, that's definitely something I'm going to take on board and do a bit more. And I think we're going to need that as we're going. Like, one of the things I've sort of thought about was, it's going to be like, I know you're open with an exhibition already, aren't you, in Dunoon Borough Hall, but like, and we'll hopefully start screening in January with community cinemas. And I think some of that's quite positive, that you can have quite a big space, you can do 2 meters, you could do it quite safely, but it's going to take a while for some audiences to come back into venue, and audience development is going to be really key in terms of COVID and building audiences' trust. So maybe if you have any thoughts of tips to help that trust and build those audiences, that might be helpful.
I think programming is going to certainly be key to that, because I know that there are some cinema spaces that have reopened, but that maybe people aren't taking the risk and taking the chance, but partly because there's not something that they really are invested in seeing. And I think we're probably also going to have to understand that quite a lot of people are going to be economically impacted by this the pandemic, and so their spend is going to be really carefully thought about before they come out to something and take a chance on things. So I think we're going to have to maybe do quite a lot of comfort programming, which is about showing things that will make people feel better. and that they will be willing to take a chance on it. It may be about trying to target groups to come together, friendship groups or parent groups from schools or something like along those lines. So it's definitely new challenges ahead.
That's reminding me in my work, at the same time I'm working with the Northeast of North Digital Arts Festival. They were due to program in November and weren't able to. They've gone on pause. So we decided to go for an evaluation review that looked back at their past successes and spent some time on that. And we've realized it's pretty much mainly been an audience development process to really hear what they didn't get a chance to at the time, how people experienced or reflected on it from every role, from the artists they were supporting to the actual audiences themselves. And so they've realized this has been a really rich time to actually build relationships with those audiences and learn things about them that they didn't know even when they were programming stuff for them. And that now that some of those audiences are actually going to be participants or will feel part of the next programming because there's a real dialogue going on. So I'm wondering if on some levels there's opportunities to kind of have those dialogues, because a lot of people are in a similar space where they feel like, oh, I want to support the recovery of this sector or this local resource because they know it's been a tough time. So I wonder if in a way that's an opportunity, but knowing how to couch that, it's very bespoke, very distinct to each area. Sarah, I'm wondering, with your experience recently in supporting organizations through this period, have you seen some of those strategies digitally that have helped either sustain and retain audiences or build new ones with anticipations of the challenges still ahead?
Yes, it's been interesting. I think the kind of switch to digital has had some real positives that I've heard in terms of reaching people who were physically not engaging with different projects, but who could do now because they were at home and because everyone was actually stuck at home. That playing field was a bit leveled. So certainly I was doing some work with the Carnival in Whitley Bay, just outside Newcastle, and they did loads of kind of do it yourself videos for people to kind of make stuff at home for the lockdown carnival. And they definitely said that they were engaging with people who maybe felt a bit exposed in the past and didn't want to be in the middle of carnival, but actually doing something in the safety of their own home with their kids was a much safer way of doing it, and they didn't feel quite so like under the spotlight. So I think the digital kind of has enabled some different audiences to engage with us maybe that we didn't before, but there is a massive kind of digital divide as well in terms of access to devices in different families, who might be sharing just one iPad amongst everyone or just a smartphone. Not everyone's got unlimited Wi-Fi, and so I think there's some real socioeconomic factors that mean the digital culture offer is probably reaching the people who were engaging with it in real life as well, mainly. And also what I've seen is some of the nicest things that have been happening have been both digital and real world. They've kind of tried to run in parallel with having how-to videos maybe, but sending out the box of all the materials so that you've actually got something. There's a project in Corby that did a piece of work which sent out a kind of kite making kit with videos about how to make your kite. And then when it was possible for the lockdown eased, people actually could stand socially distanced in the park and all fly their kites. So it was a lovely kind of combination of the digital and the real world and the community. So yeah, I think I've just been so struck by how imaginative arts organizations have been and how they've really kind of jumped to the challenge and learned so quickly about how to edit videos and make stuff online. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting work out there.
Great. And I'm wondering, because we were also going to touch on evaluation and the role evaluation can play in audience development, but it's also crucial at a period like this. And I guess, Jenny, with your role at Dunoon Borough Hall, you talked about that internal team and making them feel part of that journey and making sure that evaluation, you report it back to that team. That evaluation includes that learning and development and delivering some of these events. And do you capture that? Do you help feed back to them how they've grown through delivering a process or gaining new experiences as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that I've got to still do. But I think even it's really important that decision makers, whether that's a chief exec or a director or board of directors, they really also see the impact. I'm really keen on an organization having empathy for its audience and its community. And I think if you have empathy and you understand a lot more, then your audience development will just go up, because people just want to feel valued and they want to trust you. And if they trust you, they'll trust whatever you're putting out there as well, you know. But I think that's my wish, that we have a board that is fully engaged in that. But I think quite often boards are like all about governance or the minutiae or finances. Everything's about finances, you know, that just takes over. But it's really about the huge benefits that the arts give back to the world, to community, to individuals. And I've got to get better. But I think for me, I'm pulling in more people or more staff around me to even work on applications and getting them to just think differently. Part of it is just thinking a bit more in the round about everything that we do and connecting it in different ways, you know. So it's not simple. And I think that's why the arts, we're not very good at selling ourselves. And I think because it's not a really straightforward answer, you know, because we're touching on so many different things within the needs of a human, well-being, fulfillment, you know. So anyway, sorry.
I think well, what you said about making sure you pay the artist for 2 days at the end of the project to evaluate it was key, because that's something that we do all the time, is that we are trying to do too much because we've got too big an idea for too little money, we don't have the resources. And so that's where evaluation sort of, it's always like, oh my god, I've got to do the form at the end, you know. Yeah. But then when you look back and like that, you know, and then, or you look back at the data you've got, it's so valuable, it's amazing. Like, or when you're doing that evaluation, like, oh yeah, this is, but because you're just always quite often on your own trying to do too many things, it's, I mean, yeah, I think, but that idea of paying the artist 2 days, I'm definitely taking that on board, Jenny.
Yeah, and I think just I was just like working in a school as well in Glasgow, and we, you know, it was a project that impacted lots of teachers. It was one artist working with a group of care experienced young people, but then it just sort of grew arms and legs, and other teachers in the school all came to visit because they all heard about it. And then the head teacher, so at the end, we just took the time to ask the head teacher down, and we got this incredible feedback. And I just think we don't ask for it. We don't ask people to tell us what, you know, why not? Because we know we're making a difference, but we assume everyone knows the same as well. We've got to just be a bit more blunt in taking the time to do that, you know.
Yep. Well, because it's in the word itself with evaluation, it's about value, and it's a really valuable. It's a really, people are passionate about the value of what's been going on, and if you give them an outlet that makes sense, they will pour it out. You can see even with popular culture on YouTube, the amount of commentary that's going on about the things they love and the fandom that gets built, that can still work at that smaller scale as well. And I think, Anne, you were mentioning the role of having kind of designers come in to really give good quality messaging and experiences. That's part of that collaboration as well, that you understand that story is kind of coherent to engage with.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity to support local practitioners if there's expertise in the local area and we're in a rural context. Then if we're raising money to deliver projects, then it's on our shoulders, really, a responsibility that we should take on to try and engage local people if the skills are there, or build the skills alongside other workers. The film festival has worked over the years with film professionals from out with the area, which has been, like I said earlier, really invaluable because they are working in a film context 12 months of the year. But the work that they do is complemented by the local presence and the local work on learning about our audiences and knowing what they will take a chance on and what they might not, and having a real capacity to be able to get in and start selling the programme locally. So that balance of professional expertise and local knowledge and community engagement skills is it's a nice mix when you can get it right.
Yep.
But yeah, design has certainly been key, I think, for something that is intermittent like that. You know, you disappear for 10 months of the year and then you reappear. And in order to capture people's attention in the midst of a very visual world, you have to have something that really strikes them as a memory of the year before. And they go, oh yeah, that's what that means. Pick one up. It might be something interesting.
So I'll use that as I'm going to post that YouTube link you sent to the.
Oh yes, and that little video is also a form of evaluation because it's vox pops with people coming and going from events over the course of the weekend. So we've done those almost every year. So we've also, we've utilised photography and film each year as a way of recording and evaluating what's gone on. We've also been quite lucky in that, given that it's a film festival, quite often young filmmakers will turn up and make their own documentary just because there's an opportunity. And so the deal there is they'll get into a couple of films for free, but they send us the footage when it's done. And that's all usually quite reasonably good free advertising and free.
Apologies, that reminds me of the very first webinar we did. It was Mull of Kintyre Music Festival, went completely online, and they did this promotional stunt that beamed David Bowie's was something Spaceman song to the actual space station, and it got massive publicity and attention. And then you realize actually there is a whole part of the market that is doing the work for you, writing about what you're doing and building those relationships, or finding ways for them to write about your festival and get those details. That becomes copy and paste evaluation right there. So sometimes that's why those partnerships, which were so extensive with your festival, are great to see.
Yeah.
So I'm realizing that we're at 8:30. We could go on and on and on about audience development, but so much rich information there. Thank you, all of the panelists, for your time and your efforts to share those really powerful, meaningful stories and insights. One last point I'll make is this has obviously been brought by Charts, Culture Heritage Arts, Argyll and Isles, who are essentially a network-based organization where you'll be able to find lots of those skills and talents and insights among the network. So I'd really look to use this as a resource in that idea of audience development as well. There's a lot of people with shared challenges or with shared opportunities and skill sets to complement that work. So do look to use this resource in that way. Partly on Wednesday, we've got a workshop following up on this webinar on audience development, where you can connect with others and share some of your ideas or some of your challenges for audience development, and you'll get some time to develop that as well. And this is obviously, again, all part of the helping to support applications or stimulate applications to our Placemakers fund. So that was the £5,500 for creative collaborations and placemaking around Argyll and Isles. So do, again, look at that idea of audience development as part of those applications. If you're thinking of applying, how are you thinking about who that work is for and how you're thinking about engaging with them as well. And we're always keen to have conversations to support that. So one last thank you to all the panelists. Really enjoyed this session tonight, and I hope you did too. And thank you everyone for attending. Hopefully we'll hear and see from you very soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Yes, take care.